Hi, it's Dan the Real Estate Guy coming to you from the home office once again. Today's topic is vacating a property after you purchase it. There are techniques in which you'll buy a property and someone will be living in it and they don't know that you own it. All right, two that come to mind right away is my non-owner occupant letter, where I did 45 of those transactions in an increasing market where owners took my money and ran. They knew the market was going up and it was going to crash at any moment. So they were willing to sell to me below retail value, let me take the risk of getting caught with that property. And they fully, knew that the property needed lots of work, had a tenant in it, and they didn't want to deal with all that. And they, for me taking on those problems, those challenges, and those risks, they were willing to sell below retail. Remember, I showed them what retail was, and I showed them what I needed to pay in order for it to be a win for me. If that was a win for them, they should take my money and run. And 45 people took my money and ran from about 2001 through the top of the market. I slowed down at the end knowing it was going to crash, but I knew that that technique was going to get me some problems and challenges that I would deal with. One of them would be knocking on the door and letting the tenant know that their landlord, their owner, sold me that property. It would take them back a little bit because after all they would say, well, you never saw the property. You never came and looked at the side. So they didn't want to believe it at first. I mean, imagine living somewhere for 10 years and someone knocks on the door and says, hi, I'm your new owner. And by the way, I need you to move out so I can fix all the things that need to be fixed and I can sell it on the retail market. It's not easy. I'm fairly comfortable with it because I know in my heart, and I would explain it to these folks, that I'm going to operate at what I call above fair. Whatever fair is, I'm going to be better than that. Okay? I'm going to take a moment and think about that person, put myself in their shoes, and how would I want to be treated? You see, I know that I wasn't the only investor that that seller spoke to. I know that my competition, had they gotten that property, probably just would have sent a legal representative over and gave them a 30-day, 60-day, or 90-day notice, depending on what was required by the laws, tenant, landlord type laws, whatever was required at that time. All right, they would just send someone. They wouldn't even go in person. They would just send someone, if they weren't home, there would just be a notice put on the door. And then there would be a certified copy sent in the mail. They'd come home from work, and there's the news. So the house got sold and you're moving out, right? I put a little personal touch on it and I went to the property. That's what I would encourage you to do, especially if you're going to operate small. I realize some of those competitors that would do what I just explained perhaps are doing 5 or 10 times more transactions than I am. Some big shots aren't even in town. They've got an army of people here and they're running their business from somewhere else, all right? But I go ahead and do it one-on-one with these folks, and often by the time I leave, we're kind of friends. I mean, they realize I'm the guy doing what I do. I'm just doing my job, so to speak, and I'm doing it the best I can, and I'm treating them the best that I can. All right, so some folks will be uncomfortable with this process. I never really was. I would just, like I said, relax and think about the situation and try to put together what I would consider to be a win-win. It's a win if you come out of there with them understanding that you're giving them time to shop for a new place. You're giving them the required legal notices, but you're also, in my case, I gave them some incentive to be out earlier. In other words, if we were in a market where a 30-day notice was required, I gave them a 30-day notice, but I'd give them a bonus, perhaps up to $1,000, depending on how good the transaction was. I'd give them $1,000 if they were out in 2 weeks. I would explain to them it costs money to move, so the $1,000 was to help them move. Or some cases, it's been many years, if they didn't have a good savings, they're going to have to put a deposit down on the place that they find to rent. It's going to take them a little bit to get the deposit back on the one that they're renting currently. Some cases they didn't have much of a deposit in the current one because they've been there 10 years, all the way back to where deposits just weren't very big. So I would really take all these things into consideration and see what the person's response was. If they were upset or mad, I waited till they cooled down a little bit. But the bottom line is I would let them know they either could move. They're moving either way. They either can move with some cash in their pocket, in this case, or they can move anyways. They can wait till day 30 and move on the 30th or 31st day and not get anything. Or they could ignore that, let that time go by, and then I have to evict them. It's very rare for me to have to do an eviction, and I usually put it to them this way. please don't make me evict you. In other words, if I'm doing an eviction, it's because you didn't move out in a timely manner. And I believe that you weren't going to. You see, I would explain to them that if they needed an extra week here or 2 weeks there, as long as they communicated and they could prove, yes, I have a place to live, here's the contact information of my new owner or the management company, here's a copy of my contract, whatever they could do to prove to me, hey, I got a place. It's just that it's not going to be ready for a few weeks past your deadline. I don't want you to have to spend the money on eviction. I wouldn't want to write that check to the eviction attorney if they're just going to move out a week later. You see, so you got to work with them. A little give and take there. So I would just think about how I would want to be treated, treat them similar, and make sure that they understand I'm going out of my way, I'm operating above fair. Our conditions changed here. At one point we're required to give a 90-day notice. That's a long time. So I definitely would have incentives for them moving out within 30 days if you have to give a 60 or a 90. Right? And I also encourage them to communicate. When they do find their place, let me know the approximate move date so I can start planning things. Right? And on that first day there, I would let them know that now that I'm the owner, I usually try to bring some type of proof, either title company paperwork, or I could even bring the phone number of the title officer and have them call locally with an escrow number and verify that I bought it and that it closed escrow. You see, they could take the time to call their property management company or their landlord if they were in contact with a previous owner. Some of the previous owners were good enough to, on the day of close, give them a phone call and let them know that they did sell the property, verifying my story. But either way, they're a little bit taken back, a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. I just let them know that you don't have to let me see the inside of the house today, that I need to give you a 24-hour intent to enter, meaning I'm going to come back in 24 hours from now. Here's your 24 hours. I would have the form with me, and I would say, or if you'd like, if you want to save me my trip back here tomorrow and not inconvenience yourself tomorrow as well, you could let me see it now. And I would say 9 out of 10 let me see it right on the spot. Sometimes they were uncomfortable if they weren't living clean, so to speak. They weren't good housekeepers. I would just let them know that I'm not looking at their stuff and how they keep house. I'm looking at the floor plan. I'm looking at what kind of work I should be planning for after they move out. So once they move out, I'm going to be coming in. Am I redoing the kitchen? Am I redoing the bathrooms? I need to look at that kind of stuff and kind of put my budget together. Alrighty? Now, there's other things you can do here. You need to be able to read the people a little bit. Hard to judge a book by its cover, but if you spend 10 or 15 minutes with these folks and you talk things through, you got to see if they're working with you. Are they giving you a story, or are they really working with you? And in some cases, they're kind of excited about a move sometimes. It's like they've been there 10 years, they probably wanted to move a few times, just never made the move. Sometimes they see it as a new chapter in their lives and they're fine with it after they've gotten used to the idea. But you want to read them a little bit, and as their time's going by, if they keep making excuses without proof of a new place to move to, they're probably going to drag you out a ways. So you need to figure out ways to stop that. You may have to file, do the filing for an eviction just to show them that you're serious. The initial filing you could either do it yourself, or you could pay a small fee for the initial filing. This isn't the actual full-blown eviction later on. This is just a 3-day pay or quit form, but you don't want them to pay. This is for you to get possession of the property. So you're letting them know. Once your 30 days is up, whatever the legal requirement was after that, then you can move on with an eviction if you need to, but they'll often try to drag you out. I just had one do this, and I kind of knew he was doing it, and I was so busy I kind of let it go longer than I should have before I took real action. Once I filed the eviction paperwork, he got a little more motivated and he was out within a few weeks. All right, he just dragged his feet and didn't really get things going as early as he should have. So you got to watch out for that. Something else to consider here. If you find you have a really solid tenant and they have really good income, you need to be looking at, is it possible to help them own the property? In other words, you were going to fix it up and sell it anyways. Find out if they're qualified for a high enough value. Would you like to sell it to them? Remember, if you find someone that's qualified They've been saving their money, they've been renting a place, but they're kind of procrastinators. And they liked where they lived and they didn't mind their payment. Take a hard look at what value would work for you. Remember, there probably won't be another agent on their end. They certainly could, if they know an agent they want to represent, they certainly could, but you'd have to, you can't save them money if they're costing you a fee on that. So you might explain to them that if there isn't an agent on their end, and they're comfortable doing a transaction directly with you, it'll all be done the same way any transaction would be done. They can get inspections. They live there, so they shouldn't need them. But they know what they're getting into. They can look at your comps. They can go get their own comps. They can make sure they're not paying too much, that they're being treated fairly. And if they're qualified for that, and they can get a loan, they've just been kind of procrastinating, and they liked where they were renting, maybe they would like to own that property. And maybe they can pay enough that it works for you too. Because now you're going to have very little carrying cost. Maybe you're only going to do the work to the property because they're already living there. They may not need any work done. But let's say their loan's going to require a clear pest control report, let's say, and there's dry rot. You know, figure out what's the minimum work here to do so that the lender will lend. Maybe you don't have to rebuild everything. Maybe you can just do what's required for the lender. Clear the pest. If it needs paint and carpet, maybe that's something they can do after they own it, right? So you can work all that out. Maybe you can make a win-win transaction with the tenant right there and help them become a homeowner. That's pretty cool when you can do it. Doesn't happen that often, but from time to time you'll find that situation. Also, along with that same theme, if they're a strong tenant with good income, after all, you know they're fairly stable. They've been in the same place a long time. If you buy this type of property, they've probably been there a long time. They're not moving right away. So if you're buying something to hold, they'll be a great tenant. If you're buying it with the intent, in this case, of fixing it up and selling it, but you do have also some buy and hold properties, think about if is there a vacancy that they could fill. Something similar to this property, or maybe it's not similar, but you have to assess their situation. Maybe they had some kids move out of the house and now they'd be okay in a condo, or they'd be okay in a duplex and you happen to have some. So think about that as well. Sometimes it's not just one way to think, right? If you've watched the video on thinking outside the box, that helps, all right? You have a standard way to look at the scenario and how to think about it, then you can also get a little bit creative, right? Get a little bit creative. Think outside the box. Could they be a tenant for one of your other properties? If you've been at this a little while now and you know other investors that do buy and hold more than you do, it might be smart to give them a call and find out if they have anything. See how this can work? You're always looking to solve a problem or situation and to move on, to keep your transaction moving through what we like to call the pipe or around the racetrack. You got to keep it moving. From the time you close that thing, you have to think about it. There's something I can do every day to keep it moving towards a paycheck, right? Getting a person out is just part of it. Then you're going to do the fix-up, the marketing, the sale, the close, the whole bit. But this is critical. When you buy a property with somebody in it, it can cause you a lot of carrying costs if you don't jump right in and have a plan. Have a plan for getting them out. The best way to sell a property is vacant, in great shape, with a lockbox. It's not in bad shape with a tenant in it. You know, once in a while you could pull that off, but that's a small market. You want to get that property spiffed up, ready to go, turnkey condition, priced at retail value or a little bit below, depending on your market, and get that thing out the door so you can move on to the next one. All right, so that's getting a tenant out of a property. Sometimes it's a previous owner. If you've tagged into the trustee sale buyers and you're buying a property where the person in the property was the previous owner, I need you to keep a couple important things in mind. They have become okay with letting the property go. They've probably done a little bit of research. They know banks, when a bank takes a property back, they offer far too much cash in my area. They may not still be doing this, but a few years ago it was ridiculous. They paid some people $3,000 to move. You can't do that in most cases. It only costs you $600 plus time to get rid of them using an eviction attorney in my area. Check your area. Every area is a little bit different. Some areas have more restrictions, some areas have less. But find out if there's any attorneys in your area who specialize in eviction. They have it very systemized. And we have some in our area that do 400 or 500 evictions a year. They have it all computerized. They know all the dates and deadlines. They have the procedures down, they have the fees nice and low because they're doing volume. So you don't have to offer a bunch of money to these people to move out. I just let them know it's $500 or $600 to the eviction attorney, or it's $500 or $600 to you, you know. And when you have a previous owner, you have to remember they haven't paid any payments in probably a year in my area. It could be up to 2 years. I talked to an owner today, hasn't made a payment in 26 months. Yet they still don't mind asking you for free rent, okay? They want to be there for free for a while. You know, it just isn't necessary. Give them the legal required notices, get them out. You know, if you need to pay them a little bit, the same you'd pay to an eviction attorney, fine, but don't pay them thousands and thousands of dollars like the banks do. I remind them that I'm not a bank. The banks made dumb decisions and ended up in a bad situation, and they needed a bailout. No one's bailing me out, right? So I don't get to make those dumb decisions. So really have to watch these folks. They've gotten comfortable with letting the house go. They know it's acceptable now. Lots of folks doing it. And then they tend to look at other ways they can take advantage. You know, just something that happens. So you want to make sure they understand, you know, that they haven't made payments in a long time. They should have money saved up. They should have already been looking for a place to go, and they should not be in your way. All right? You can still make a win-win with them. I usually give them 10 days free, and after that, we're gonna charge rent, and it's not going to be cheap, and you know, we're going to do everything we can to get them out quickly at that point. You don't want them holding you up. So those are two scenarios, or maybe other scenarios where you buy and you're dealing with previous tenants or owners where they didn't know you bought the property. That's going to happen. It gets even more complicated. Not really complicated. None of this is real complicated. But it gets a little more involved when you buy, say, a duplex with tenants on both sides, or a 4-unit building with 4. You're basically just going to go in and redo the rental agreements in most cases. You should have copies of the old ones. You should be transferring it to your management company if you're using a management company, and they'll take care of all this for you. Or if you're managing, which I do recommend, you manage your first few keepers yourself and really learn that process. Then you're going to redo all the rental agreements with them, and you know, hopefully lock them in for a year or so. You don't have to use leases. You can use month to month, but you're going to want to get control of the building and get things going. But this particular video is about vacating. Sometimes when you buy a duplex or a fourplex, you need to vacate everybody and start over. You know, fix the property up and get better. And you can use a similar situation here as calmly, coolly, and real smoothly working with folks to have them move on so you can get done with that property what you'd like to get done with it. All right, so we'll see you on the next video. Thank you.